our Sling application works on this URL decomposition itself. So there are few reference things which you can actually go through and try to understand on a deeper level. So I'll just show you on a high level what things are, how things are. You can use this same link which I have used. So probably you can use this link for referencing the URL decomposition part. So let me quickly share that to you. Yes. So what happens in URL decomposition is nothing but when a request is made from the server, right? You will hit some project path, right? You land to the project website from somewhere, right? Probably from Google or from some advertisement links in your social media site or somewhere from your mails or somewhere anywhere, right? So once you have the clickable links, you will navigate to your home page or any other page of your website. So this is what your page can be for your developed site, correct? So here you have so many other pages where you can navigate from the navigation bar or from your CTA links or anywhere. So if you see this, this is the path of your page. Okay, so I'll just go into. So this is the path of the page. So when you look into this entire path, how is it actually resolving it? So first it shows en.html. Then when you click on rewards, it shows rewards page. And when you click on travel, it shows me travel page and the entire content for this travel page over here, right? So how is it actually getting resolved is what we need to see. This is mainly happening by URL which is being handled within AEM by Sling. So URL is kind of read from the browser, and that is being mapped to the content within within AEM content, and that gets rendered. So if you see, I'll open vRetail's site. Let's see. So how this is, so if you look into this particular site, right, this is an AEM site. But if you see the path of the page is just from entravel.html or enhelp.html, it is just the shortened path. It does not have that content, the entire content, language masters, or project name. All that is not there in the content, right? So that is handled by your dispatcher administration level guys. So they associate the full URL, which is this one, right? So the whole thing will be associated to a short URL. So the mapping of that full URL to short URL is done in the dispatcher level by your infra team guys. So once you let them know, like this is the path of all where my all pages will reside. Like if you go into this, under EN is where all my site pages reside is what you can just let them know. So they will set up the mappings between the short path and the long path in the dispatcher configurations. So what will we be doing? So we need to give this entire path. So now that you know the entire path, so you will know how the mapping is actually done. So what they do, they write a rule wherein like en slash something something like anything like $1 or something like that dot html or something. I don't know how the rules are written because I am personally I've not explored that much. So if you see anything till here is what they would have mapped to the shortened path. So when the request like this comes to our dispatcher, so what it does, it will actually fetch the short path of here, the dispatcher route. This short path will be mapped to this particular long path rules wherever they would have mapped. So when it comes to the dispatcher is a short path, but from dispatcher to your publisher, it comes with the path the request is made, which means it prepends or with the actual path. It can be like It's going to be like, okay, the content we retail US. So this is the entire full path which just comes as a request to your publisher from dispatcher, post mapping with the URL which your administration level guys have written. Okay, so that's where you are getting the full path, and the publisher is hit with the full path on your instance. So once that happens, what? Let's see this. CRXD. So once that happens, the full path comes in here. So now I'll look into this particular page. So content we retail US EN men. So if the end users have hit EN/men of the we retail site, so based on the dispatcher configurations, it will actually map to the full path and then get the full URL. So the full URL is under content we retail US EN men.html. So if you log in into your CRXD, how the content is getting resolved. So just one second. So if you log into CRXD, that's where your content is getting saved, right? So I'm just going to hit that path. My content is under slash content. I mean, my pages reside under slash content, right? So content we retail US EN. So content, so I just made a call from here, from this particular search bar. So it is like content, we retail, US and EN. After this, I have men. So men is the page, .html is the default extension of the particular page, right? So how is that getting mapped to? Like which is treated as extension, which is treated as a page path? Let's see that now. So it got mapped to this particular page, but how did that mapping have to happen? So if you see here, this is the full, I mean, assume like this is one of your URLs. So your HTTP or HTTPS becomes your protocol browser. So the browser handles that, maps the HTTP protocol. That is always a must for any URL. And then comes your host. Your host will be the domain name of your site. So if it is a vRetail site, it is going to be vRetail. It depends on the domain name, whatever your project has purchased. So if you look into this airmiles here, this domain name becomes your beta.airmiles.ca. So this is the domain name. So if you see facebook.com, your facebook.com becomes the domain name. If you see gmail.com, your www.gmail.com becomes your Gmail domain name of your Gmail account. So all of that domain name is kind of bought by your project leadership or somebody. So based on that domain name, it also gets registered in the Google search engines, or the wherever the domain names are registered. So that's where it will look for the list over there and fetch the host based on that. So your domain name. So this domain name, after domain name, whatever comes until the first dot becomes your content path in AEM. So if you see tools/spy is the content path. Content path is nothing but the page path. Content is nothing but wherever your pages are present, right? So from content path is going to be like vRetail /content vRetail EN men is the content path for me in my request which I made for this particular page. Okay. So I'll just take off the CF hash. Looks better than this. So yes, so my domain name for this request is localhost:450 is the domain name for me, or the host name, and from here slash till the first dot, which is still here, is the content path. And now since I don't have any additional dots in that file, there are no selectors which I'm passing in that particular URL. But here, if you look into this one, until between the first dots and the last dots, whatever is present, right, that becomes the select. So selectors is nothing but which you will be using to render the script accordingly. Okay, the priority is given based on the number of selectors which is added in the URL. So that particular script or the HTML or a JSP will load based on the selectors as well. Okay. So then after the last dot till the last slash, whatever comes in, right? That becomes your extension. So extension is nothing but your HTML or JSP or anything. So usually it is going to be an HTML because it's your website's page which you are seeing as an HTML, right? So an HTML. Sometimes you might, in few sites, you might not see an extension at all. So that is because your dispatcher is again having the mapping, wherein after this, so some pages, right? If you see here, if you see here, I can just take off this .html, but page wouldn't load for me here. So so if you see, it again routes back to .html. So this dispatcher settings is not made in this particular site.
Okay.
So a dispatcher setting will be made to automatically append .html as an extension in the end if there is no extensions available. So certain rules can be written that way based on your project type. So here they've not made. So by default, you need to have an extension for sure. So for your REST URL to map to one of the contents in your AEM structure. So now between the last dot and the slash becomes your extension. And after slash, whatever you see, right, until if you have a question mark, so that becomes your suffixes. So your suffixes can be your parameters which you're passing to
Yeah.
your backend application. So you can pass it as suffix or you can also pass it as query parameters. I'm sure you already know what query
Yeah.
parameters are. So anything after question mark, it becomes your query parameters. So all these are all optional. So what are optional? Your selectors, your
And
suffixes, and your parameters.
query
The
parameter.
items are all optional items for your URL. But the mandatory ones are all your protocol, host,
Host
content path,
and
and your
content path
extension. Yes, these
extension.
four items are mandatory items for your URL. So
Okay.
most of the times it's just this plain four items which goes in as the part of your request URL. Very rare that I have used suffix because it's actually not it's mostly not used. But in AEM, if you see the sites page wherever you're navigating, right? These are all your suffixes, correct? If you see this, look at this. After your .html, after your extension, you have slash and then you have all slashes, right? So AEM internally is using suffixes to actually map to the path of the page within the Touch UI editors consoles, correct?
Yeah.
Understood. So that is where you're actually using suffixes, but in your
Publisher.
publishers, it depends on project to project.
Yeah. Yeah.
That you need to use it always and depends on the developer who's also developing it. So if you're comfortable with query parameters, you can actually go ahead with it. If you're comfortable with selectors, you can also go ahead with it. Or suffixes, you can go ahead with it. So the problem here is anything with query parameters does not get cached in your dispatcher level.
Yeah.
So if you would want to cache that particular element, you need to not use query parameters in such cases. You can use suffixes and selectors, but not query parameters to cache the element in dispatcher. So you should keep that in mind when you're developing something. Okay.
Mm.
So now when I see for this particular URL, when this is all hit, so this is my protocol, my host name, then the content path is tools and spy, then becomes my selectors, printable.a4 is my selector, and extension is your HTML, and then suffixes is that a/b, and my query parameters are nothing but x equal to 12. Okay. So with this, how is the map happening? Let's see that. So before you come into this, I'll show you this, whatever is there on the VRetail side. So for this content VRetail US EN this is the content path.
Content path.
So when I hit that content RxD, this is the page. So under this men is, if you see, is JCR primary type is a CQ page. So under this path, whatever child nodes are present, right, all that will be loaded on the page because it is of type CQ page. It will iterate between all the child items irrespective of any number of node levels. So including this node level which has gone deeper, right, probably like 5 levels or 4 levels deeper, even this node will be loaded on the same page which is called as men.
Yeah.
Okay, so how that is happening? So first, to render the page, you need a template, right? A
Mm.
template will be mapped to a page component as such. So if you see, where every page will have its own JCR content node. So this JCR content node will be of type CQ page content. So if you see, this is the JCR primary type, which is nothing but the CQ page component. See, I mean CQ page content. So this
Yeah.
is the primary type associated to every page node over here. So this is a node. Whatever you see this side on the left hand side is all node. And this one, whatever you see on these, right, are all
Mm.
properties for the
Okay.
current node. So JCM content is a node, and this has all these list of properties, probably like 7 or 8, okay, 11 properties.
Okay.
So every properties will have two mandatory items. One is your JCR primary type. Every node, right? Every node, not your property, sorry. Every node will have two mandatory properties associated to it. One is your sling resource type, and one more is your JCR primary type. So these two are the key properties which actually defines content rendering on the page. So primary type, when it is of type page content, this node should have this one. So after this, you have this link resource type. So your primary type actually defines what is the type of the page. Okay. So this is a page content. So that's where I get to know, like, I need to render all the content for the page. So by how? How will I render the content? I can render the content using this sling resource type. So sling resource type is the one which actually maps the resource onto the page.
Page.
Okay. So if you see, this is the path of the sling resource type. So what is the path? So since this is a page, it will also have one additional parameter, that is your CQ template. Okay. So
Okay.
you will use a template to create a page, correct?
Yeah.
That same template path will be added as a property under that JCR content node for that particular page menu. I created this men page using the template called hero page template, which resides under bonnet and v retail. This is a path for it. So if you see, there is a template as well for associated for this. So how you can actually check, these are all paths within the same CRXDE. So just copy that particular path. How do you copy that? Just double click on this particular item. You can copy that and then paste it here. Once you paste it here, you just get to see that. Look at this. This is the template, which is called a colon template. And then it has all the other items under templates.
Okay.
So this is the editable template which is used. So when we are doing editable templates, we'll go ahead with this and see how things are, what it is. So I'll not go into this in a deeper way right now. So that was the template which was used. And how is the content getting rendering? So a template will be associated to a page component. Either it navigates to the template path, and within that template path, it will find the JCR content, the sling resource type, which is nothing but B retails components feature page. Okay, so this is the resource type for it. The same resource type will be added into your page as well. Your main page is there here, right? So if you look into this one, you used a template, the hero page template. So that had a resource type of V retail component structure page, right? So same
Mm.
sling resource type gets added to this page as well, whichever page you create using that particular template.
Okay.
Okay, so this is my page component. So for my page component, what I do, copy this. So just if you would want to still copy it the normal way, width of it, and then you can, okay, just a second, and then you can copy it. So I'll just copy this. So if you see, the start of this does not have any of the root nodes of whatever is present here, correct? Look at this. I have apps, bin, content, but I don't have anything called B retail, right?
Mm.
Sorry, I think I missed it. Something went wrong. Just a second. My laptop seems to be hanged.
Okay.
So look at this. I don't have this path anywhere. So how is it actually mapping to? So by default, the priority is under slash apps if you don't have any normal root paths, whatever is available in this section. Okay.
Okay.
So if it is not present, if none of normal properties or normal starting items, like if it does not starts with any of these level nodes, by default it gives slash apps. And if it does not find the same path under slash apps, it goes to slash libs and searches for this particular same path. So again, if under slash libs, if that path doesn't exist, it gives a 404 page. Okay.
Okay.
So now let's look into the first item, that is slash apps. So under apps, I found this path. So again, under this path, this is the page component which is coming in. So this is the page component which by default renders the structure of the page for me. It is not the content, whatever is there here. It's not this hero banner and this products which you're seeing, right? All that is going under components, but the structure, the header, the footer,
Yeah.
the structure, the width of the page, all that is defined by your page component, which is nothing but this particular page. So it goes under the structure level node inside this particular part page. So here is where it will actually render the content. So this node comes in a picture, right? So from this node, it actually looks for any selectors within your particular item. I mean the URL. So since you don't have any selectors here, right? You just have extension. So what it does, it looks for the same name, that is page dot with whatever extension you have given. You have given an HTML extension. So it look for a script with the name page.html over here. Since that page.html is not present here, it will look for another property called sling resource supertype. Okay.
Yeah.
So first it maps to the sling resource type. From sling resource type, it will look for the correct script to render the content. But since it does not have the correct script, which means page.html is not there here, it will look for additional property within the same node of that page, which is nothing but sling resource supertype. Okay. So here sling resource supertype is mapping to this particular path. So again, it does not starts with any of the default starting values of CRXDE. It looks for a path under apps. Once it looks for a path under here, again it will look for page.h, since it's navigating to this particular route again, right? So this root node is nothing but page. So it will look for again page.html, which is again not found here. And it goes and looks for the sling resource supertype property again. So if this property is not there, sling resource supertype, this is an optional property unlike sling resource type. So if this property is not there, it renders a 404 page. Okay,
Okay.
because it was not able to resolve to that particular script. But now since you have this, it will look for this path again. Under apps, again, since it's not, this is the page component, right? So it routes into a lot of, again, so if you see, this is not there under apps, it's not navigating, right? So it will go and navigate under libs.
Lips.
So if it goes to inside libs, it will now look for which script.
basic page dot html.
Yeah, perfect. The same node name dot HTML, because HTML name came from the extension which your URL has. So it looks for this basic page dot HTML, and whatever script is there here, that gets loaded here. Okay. So
Yeah.
inside this one, if you see, your HTML language is defined, your header tag is defined here. Oh, and you also have certain other items defined. Let me see that. Yeah, it goes into this particular item. So this is nothing but your day CPU foundation templated containers, right? So this is your parses which comes on the page. So I
Yeah.
hope you know what parses is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this
Where
dot.
we can drag and drop the
Yeah,
components.
yes, so this dotted line, whatever you see, that is the parses. So that is getting rendered from this particular basic page.html. Okay, this is the one which is coming in. So now, how is this basic page.html getting rendered? By this Sling resource superset which came in. So now what happens? I don't want this particular structure to be defined in my particular project. So what I do, I should always point to this particular page component itself. That is the libs WCM foundation, whatever is there here. Now it is the V2 version of the page. V2 version is also released. In this V2, V1 is pointing, but V2 is also released already. So people have started using V2 from 6.4 version. Until 6.3, it is V1 version of the page component. Okay. So we need to always point to this libs WCM foundation basic page V1. This is by default used for all your templates because there are certain objects which are present for your those objects need to be there no matter what for you to use the uh, proper structure on the page. Okay, like your current page, your current node, all that is all defined within your out of the box libs foundation components. So you need to use this as a resource for all of your templates, otherwise it would not work. Okay, and then you can customize it based on your requirement. So if you see, your basic page.html is here. Oh, where did that go? I think I navigated to a wrong path. Is it
This
from
is
where?
this is
Look,
page and
yeah, looks like I navigated to a wrong path. Let me come back. Let me reroute it to this again. It should not be basic page. It should have been a page component. Let me quickly go in there. So under content, I have my main page. So which had this Sling resource type of V-retail structure page. So this is my page. So it looks for, yeah, I think I mistakenly rerouted somewhere else. So this has a Sling resource type of WCM Foundation basic page V1. Okay, how is it? I just saw V2 somewhere. Okay, never mind. So that's where it just goes in and renders the content.
it's come under V2.
Yeah, how
Then
is it?
then why it's V1 show?
Yeah, one second. Let me see that. This is my men's page, right? So you have Sling Resource type of V retail component structure and page. Um, page. So here it goes under core WCM components page V2 page. Yes. So it doesn't. It's still using V2 only, right? See, this is my 6.5 version. That's what I was wondering. How did it use V1 version? Because the latest versions are all using V2. So under V2.page, it is loading this particular page node. So here, if you see, you already have a page.html here. So this gets rendered. Okay. So inside my page.html, I'll show you when that super type comes in a picture. So you have these items, right? So these are all the includes which are there on the HTML. So this is the HTML which just gets loaded. You got this flow, right? So same like under the page, it looks for page.html. So when
Yes.
the script is already found called page.html within the same node, it would not look into this Sling resource
Sling. Yeah.
already present in the local level. So once that comes into picture, what happens? It starts rendering whatever is there in that HTML. So in this HTML, you are using cycli tags to actually use to render the content. So this data slide use, data slide call, all these are all cycli tags which are used. So it is triggering this particular Java class. It's triggering this particular HTML and footer.html, all this which is already see head.html is there under the same node, correct? Head.html. Footer.html is also there under the same node, footer.html. So if there was no footer.html here, assume like it didn't have it here,
Okay.
so what happens? At that time, it will look for a Sling resource super property under that particular node, which is under the
Okay.
page. So it has the Sling resource super type. So under this Sling resource super type, it will look for that same page name, that is the footer.html. Okay,
Okay.
this was not there under list. So I mean under apps. So I'll navigate here. So assume that footer.html was there here. Okay, at
Okay.
that time, it will map to the Sling resource supertype property node and render that footer.html under that particular supertype property. So if it is there, that gets rendered. If it is not there locally, it will look for the parent node, which is defined by your Sling resource supertype node, and renders that. So it is just like your inheritance of your Java, which
Yeah.
you it inherit from the parent level. Understood?
Yes.
So this is how so this is your script which just got rendered. So inside this script, whatever is there, all that will be executed. So same thing will happen for every level node which is there under your content node. So first thing which loaded was your page component, which was this page node, and under that page node you have this page.html script. It loads all the logic, whatever is written inside this HTML. So once that happens, so it internally includes many other HTMLs. So all the scripts under these HTMLs will be executed. Okay.
Okay.
Once that script execution happens, if of this particular JCR content level may say that is nothing but your Sling resource type. So once this node execution happens, it goes into the next level node automatically, which again has a Sling resource type. So this thing, Sling resource type is pointing to WCM Foundation components responsive grid. So this is nothing but your parses node, which comes into the picture over here. Okay. So this is the out of the box code which is defined by Adobe to render the parses on the page. So that's how since you have this root node present, it will be shown on the page. So in this responsive grid, they would have written a logic that this parses should be shown only in author instance, not in your publish instance. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
based on the logic, it will render the content. So same way it goes into the next level node, that is nothing but your hero image. So inside this hero image also you have this Sling resource type mapping. So what it does, it navigates to this particular component which is present. So this is my component, hero component, right? So how it renders, again it navigates to apps slash whatever resource you have there, and within this resource type you also have a Sling resource super type. So look at this, so it already has this hero image.html, so it wouldn't go to the super type node, it will render the local script whatever is present there. So from this local script, if you see, look at this, it is using a data slide use is nothing but it uses the Java class. To trigger the Java class, you use this particular script.
Hero image.
So yes, I'm using this particular Java class to get certain values over here and render those values. So the few values will not be present here, which will be taken from the super type and such. So it renders this particular script for hero node. Okay. So first node was your hero node under your main page, that is your hero image. So if you see, your first component is going to be your hero component, this one, correct? So inside your header will be called within your page
Page.
component itself, your header and your footer. So that's why that didn't come in. So that is coming in from your JCR content node, which has the page component. Inside that, you would have already had a header component. Similar to your hero image, you again have a responsive grid node. So which is nothing but your again your parses component, which is within the same a node. Under your parses, you also have additional parses. So how is this coming into picture? So this is one parses, and again you have included one more parses, the structure of the node to have this one, and that again has few other items, that is your title component. So again, title has a sling resource type, which is under your v retail components content tile. So I'll go under that as well. The same kind of resolution happens for every single node under your JCR, under your page.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the title component. So inside this title component, I don't have anything. I don't have the title.html, right? So it
Then
goes
it will go for
for
string
WCM
resource type.
this path and then renders the title.html accordingly. So same thing happens with all of your components, which is dragged and dropped on, matlab in the same structure. So first for your hero image, then your title gets rendered, then your product grid. The same order gets replicated on your page based on whatever resource type you have given here. Okay.
Okay.
So this is how your sling resolution is happening. So what happens? So when you are giving a selector, okay. So now I didn't have any selector, so that's why it looked for the same page name, page.html or the same node.html, right?
Yeah.
But if I had a selector coming in a picture, like here in my request, I have a selector called printable.a4.html, right? So
Yeah.
what happens? You can just see how it gets broken into. So when it actually hits, my tools.spy becomes the page content, which is nothing but you will have a page node under content called tool/spy as a page name. Okay. So in that page name, you will also have a sling resource type, which will get
Yeah.
mapped to one of the component. So that component will be probably your HR apps, HR jobs, something. Okay. So inside this particular jobs, if it finds this particular printable.a4.html on the page component level node, it will ignore the page. So for us, it was page node right over here. So here, if I had passed a selector of body.html, it will ignore the page.html which is present inside this local copy, but it will pick from the selector that which I passed as body.html. Okay, so that's where my body.html gets loaded. Okay, so whatever selector I'm passing here, that script name, if it matches within the same node name of that component level, that script gets loaded first. Understood?
Okay.
Instead of the same name, same node name.html, the selector name.html gets loaded by default. So you can just see this, read this documentation which I just sent you, right? So look at the order, the way it is kind of rendering and how it actually gets printed on the page. So you can just see that here. So that was my example one which they had given. But look at the content structure which they have shared. They have shared
And
content.
why it is necessary to pass the selectors?
It's not necessary always, but in terms of certain places, like if you would want to have different scripts rendering in some places, right? At that time, you can actually pass selectors, and so the same component can behave in two ways, right? One is by default, when you don't pass in the selectors, you can just load the normal structure. But if you would want to load a different variation of that component, or if you would want to trigger a different HTML, which would actually render different content for that particular section, right?
Okay.
In that ways, you can pass selectors and render that content.
Mm.
Okay.
Yes.
So that ways your selectors comes in very handy. So it comes in very handy for your script rendering. Okay. You can go through this. So if you see content corporate job developer.html is the request which is being made. So it just gets mapped to here this content corporate jobs developer.html. And this has a resource type of HR job. It's mapped to the component which is under apps, HR jobs. So here it renders that particular jobs.esp. So again, why ESP though HTML is present? So there is a certain a priority level which is given by AEM. So that priority is given based on the extensions as well. So mapping the request, if you see, some people, I mean, in the older versions of AEM, right, write scripts in ESPs or JSPs,
Yeah.
not HTMLs. HTMLs came in only when Cycli started. That is from 6.1 versions or 6.0 version. So until then, you didn't have your Cycli. So people used to write everything in terms of ESPs and JSPs. So the priority can be set in the backend, but now the priority is no more that way. It is going to be your .html itself. It is not going to be any of this. So if you see under jobs, you don't have any HTML pages there. So it cannot render the HTML script, right? So
Yeah.
obviously it has to take the other versions of what is defined as a default items in AEM. So JSP and ESP are the default items, which is already predefined by your Adobe guys. So if you see loading script, now what happens? You have your jobs.esp, so that gets rendered first. So if your jobs.esp was not there, then what renders based on selectors? So if you pass developer.pdf.html, it renders jobs, I mean, it would render jobs.pdf.esp. If you pass the same selectors based on the selector name, it renders that respective scripts over here. So the same component you are using different, four different functionalities over here. Okay. So you can just see this and go through this. If you have any questions, then let me know. Yeah. I just share. I think I gave you this link already. So let me know if you have not received. So this should be
Mm.
pretty straightforward. Don't go too much deeper into this because personally I have never used so many selectors to render the content. This is actually used for, as one of your certification questions. So if you can understand the order, right? The order is also mentioned here plainly.
Yeah.
How it gets rendered, what gets rendered. You can just go through this and try understanding. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Okay. Any question?
No, till now I don't have.
Okay.
Today I will download Maven and
Huh.
install all these things.
Yes.